Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show.
Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And my name is Jo, and thank you very much for joining us here. And as you can tell, we are not alone. We do have a guest with us. So welcome to the show, Jo Major.
Another Jo, not to confuse things, hey?
No, Jo, James and Jo. Technically, we should have put James in the middle, shouldn't we, really? But, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we could have just called the show The Three J's. There we go.
Love it.
Okay, Jo, delighted to have you here today. Just want to give people a brief introduction. They may have read a little bit about you on the website, but for those of you who did manage to read that, just want to share with you the reason why we've asked Jo to join us today. She's got over 2 decades experience in recruitment, hard to believe, but Jo is also a catalyst for change in diversity, equity and inclusion, DE&I, and that's what we're here talking about today. She's pioneered strategic DE&I training programs that elevate recruiter capability, attract underrepresented talent, develop client services and enhance the overall candidate experience. Not only that, she collaborates with a lot of industry leaders such as Bullhorn and the Access Group and others. She actively contributes to Women in Transport's Intersectionality Advisory Group. Try saying that, that's a mouthful. And as a founder and more importantly, perhaps, as a founder in diversity in recruitment, Jo is passionate about placing DE&I at the forefront of recruitment agency agendas. And all of you listening today are all operating in the recruitment agency market. So we do genuinely believe there's a lot for you to pick up on today. And Jo believes firmly in the power, providing people with the power to instigate genuine change and increase revenue. And finally, Jo also co-presents the LinkedIn Live series, Can Recruitment Crack Inequality? So if you want to see more of her, Jo Major is on LinkedIn. Please look up that podcast series or whatever it happens to be. So there, Jo, welcome.
Thank you. I love that intro.
Yeah. I hope you
no
do.
pressure.
I think you wrote it.
I'm not sure about the 2 decades bit.
I know that's a bit. Are you sure?
I mean, it started when you were like 5 years old, Jo.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I skipped school. I was straight in. I was a resourcer at 8.
There we go. So listen, we've got a lot of this is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for a good while now, and obviously, Jo, that's why you built your career around this particular piece. And all the people listening in today, whether they're working in recruitment agencies or running recruitment businesses, I think you've got a lot to take in on this one. So, Jo, let's jump in, ask Jo a question. And then Jo give your response, and Jo and I'll just interact and add some comments, hopefully.
We're going to have like Jo M, Jo G here, otherwise this could get really confusing. But look, I mean, you've been around this subject for a long time, and you're a subject expert. We've had obviously pre-COVID, then we've had COVID, and now we're post-COVID. But just tell us what you've observed, around DE&I just over the past few years, particularly around kind of recruitment businesses.
Yeah, so I know it seems like a buzz topic, a hot topic, like really current, especially around kind of like the COVID times and all the kind of the societal experiences that we had together in the UK and the States. But actually, when I reflect on it, I was going in front of, the London Stock Exchange and, Magic Circle law firms back in 2017, 2018 to talk about our capabilities when it came to ED&I and our recruitment services. So it's been an ongoing conversation. There's been a stack of businesses and industries like really looking at this stuff strategically for many years. I think a lot of it, the conversation was spotlighted and brought to the forefront of the public conversation, in 2020, when we saw, several social injustice like incidents, and and the devastation that they subsequently created, and there was almost like this that call to action by many organizations, an immediate kind of like knee-jerk responses. That sudden realization that we're not doing anything around social injustice, diversity, equity, anti-discrimination and whatnot. And so rushing out to market to be able to bring in like quick fix kind of initiatives, and then like everything, every big social topic, eventually the energy starts to run out of it. And yeah, I think there's been lots of critique over ED&I and really negative, unuseful conversations around is D&I dead? And I speak to lots of other experts around this topic, and I think the conclusion that I draw is, do you know what? I think the tokenistic, high profile, external glossy stuff, I think companies have definitely moved away from them. I think a lot of the initiative based work just hasn't an impact. And of course, initiatives don't work. It's about like developing strategy that's embedded in the very makeup of your organization if you want to see any change. So I do think we've seen a move away from from the stuff that we can see and we've come to expect, and it's almost like a revert back to business as usual. Those organizations where this was always a thing are continuing to make it a thing, and maybe those that did some of those initial like knee-jerk kind of short-term fixes have maybe disseminated, if that's the right word, I don't know, D&I teams, and is that the right word? And now they're looking for like that.
Yes, love it. We'll take it. It is the right word.
They're looking for that deeper work. So that's why we're seeing real change happen. But that's my observation. Does that resonate? Does it make sense?
Yeah. I think, Joe, something you said there is sort of going to lead us in nicely to the next question I want to ask you, because I think when you said that the tokenistic approach in terms of, so when we all took a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and jumped into it, and we're now at a different state. And so is that why you believe possibly why some agencies are freezing around this topic of ED&I? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that word that I used. I think I meant dismantled. Sorry. It was really bugging me.
We can't rewind.
No, I know. Sorry, and we can't edit because we're live. Sorry. Going back to your question, I think there has been, because they're like the word that you use, tokenistic. There was a lot of tokenistic work going on, and with no real purpose, right, and no real results being reported on. And I think, and actually, especially people started to call that stuff out, especially marginalised people. That they were, whether it's rainbow washing, pink washing, green washing, whatever washing it is at what any particular type of like acknowledgement day or acknowledgement month, whatever it might be. It was candidates and employees that were calling this stuff out, and I think we've maybe got to a point where, which is almost like, this is what I want to move businesses away from, is being too scared to talk about anything through fear of being called out. I will always champion the call out of nonsense work, right, and tokenistic stuff that isn't reflective of the lived experience of marginalized people, because it does more harm than good. But I do think it's like this whole shouting at people, has become has made people very, very wary about saying anything. And for me, I think this worry about saying the wrong thing is a real issue, because we need to move away from that. We need to call in, we need to stop calling out. People don't talk about things don't get done. So it's very much about, like, I try to empower recruitment teams and hiring managers to see how ED&I connects into their day-to-day work, and so they really understand the relevance, and it really kind of like empowers them to have license to talk about this stuff, because it really, really affects the outcomes of their work, the services to their clients, and the candidate experience.
Yeah, I get. Do you know what? I really get that, and I think I know when we've spoken before. you know, obviously, you know, this is a massive subject, and yeah, I speak to a lot of recruitment businesses who I don't think they know where to start, and I wonder if that's because they haven't really approached it for their own business first. So how, if I am not diverse as an organization, how am I supposed to be seen as a subject matter expert for my clients? So what's your take on kind of diversity within leadership teams in recruitment, you know, and within the recruitment community?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, I think, and I've witnessed, you know, business leaders who may, you know, who tend to belong to majority groups, you know, for example, you know, white men who lead recruitment businesses, feeling like they've got no right to show up at the table and talk about equality because they believe that they're from a majority group. And actually, I think it's about like getting, we need to appreciate that diversity takes on so many different forms. It's not just like, you know, like one dimensional. And I think, you know, to get yourself out of that mindset, like, well, I'm not marginalized, I'm not diverse, you know, I'm not a minority group. So, you know, why should, you know, how can I step into the conversation? How can I step into the work? And I always encourage businesses to really recognize that if they understand their people, and that includes their leadership team, they will be able to pick so many different identity markers that make that group at the top actually very, very different from one another, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it be education, whether it be religion, faith, class, you know, there's a whole range of things, there's a whole range of identity markers that make us diverse that you can't see. So I think it's like really figuring out, like, as a leadership team, what makes you all different, you know, and unique at the same time, and kind of, but also at the same time, really recognizing who's not showing up around that top table, you know, kind of like who's not in the room, and being really, really transparent before you step into this work, being really transparent around who's missing, who are we lacking, what diversity we are lacking, digging into the reasons why, and having some really honest conversations around that, which can be uncomfortable, but we've got to have them, and being really, really clear as an organization what you're doing to address it, and feeling comfortable with the fact that this might not be something that you've even thought about for, you know, for 10, 15 years, or since you were founded, but, you know, you're starting on your journey and sharing that. And so, you know, you don't have to have got your entire house built for you to start doing the work. In a way, if you're also at the same pace, going at the same pace as your clients, it's something that you've got in common, and it's something that you can discuss, right, and share. But yeah, I don't think like that lack of visible difference at the top should ever stop an organization feeling like they've got a right to show up about this stuff.
Yeah.
I sort of, it's interesting to hear some of those points there about, you know, if you're in the majority, it doesn't mean you can't have a say, because that's sometimes where I think people are feeling left out with regard to, well, I don't fit a certain type that should be talking about this. So that's interesting. I mean, here at iIntro, we actually have lots of our clients who do focus a lot on DE&I recruitment, or EDI. I know that those terms are interchangeable, so we'll be using it as we go throughout the day. And obviously, you know, this show is called the Retained Recruiter Show. We talk to clients all the time about how we help them transition from a transactional contingent model to a retained recruitment model. And as I say, this is quite a, you know, not just a hot topic, Joe M. Got that bit in. It's actually something that people genuinely believe into those organisations. So I suppose my question is, what has ED&I got to do with the retained model in recruitment? Because obviously, you know, that's the market that you work in as well.
Yeah, it's a great question, and a really, really important question. And my answer is always absolutely everything. The very essence of inclusive, accessible, and equitable recruitment is, it's all about fairness, it's about bias control, it's about objective decision making, it's about deep skills assessment, it's about really being able to assess things like culture fit, value alignment. It's about making things accessible. It's about taking your time to make the right decisions, and all the focus is on assessing skills and competency, because we've got time to do all of that lovely stuff. I remember when at my last job on the tools, when I was working in HR recruitment, and my manager introduced me to the retained process, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just big and scary for like exec recruiters. And, like, no. And anyway, I went through multiple retained processes, and I was just like, you know what amazed me about it was just how close you got to your client on a completely different level, even closer than when I was working on an exclusive basis. You know, you really got under the skin of their organization. You understood them, not just through the lens of their website or the job description or the one hiring manager that you met for half an hour to take a brief. You felt like you, for that moment in time, you were a part of that business. And that like almost like skyrocketed my ability to be able to build, you know, my employee value proposition, all the candidate documentation, all that additional stuff that retained search requires. But the most interesting thing for me was how I assessed candidates, how bias and objective or subjective, my subjective thinking was totally controlled. And you know, and when it came to my, you know, looking at my scoring matrix and shortlisting candidates to present to the client, it didn't matter what I felt. It didn't matter who I preferred. It didn't matter who I thought was the best social fit for the role. I could only put my highest scoring and performing candidates that I'd, you know, done a deep dive to assess their competency. And so then when I stepped into the world of inclusive, accessible and equitable recruitment and looked at all the component parts, I was like, this is just like an even more enhanced version of a retained recruitment process.
Yeah. I think we're on this very same wavelength there, Joe, on so many of the things you just said there. They just resonate with our audience, I'll say, because that's the process that we implement with the clients that we work with. And the phrase that we use over and over again is, you know, like I say, the transactional side is you're in a race and you have to go really quickly. But to do a quality piece of work, you need that interaction with the client. You need that relationship with them, so it's deep and meaningful rather than just, you know, a light touch point. And as you said, just getting, you know, that much more involved with them, you become an extension of that organization whilst you're recruiting for them. You are, you know, that talent acquisition consultant for them. And the phrase that we use is we utilize multiple layers of scientific and objective assessment to help employers make more informed, data-driven decisions. Because when you put all of that information in place, then that's what can help them. And when you bring in all the aspects of ED&I into this one as well, you can you've got the time to be able to do it rather than having to rush. And one final thing that you said there, which again hit the nail on the head: the candidate that you like, that you want to, you know, in your previous life, so to speak, that you would sometimes put forward. I always say to recruiters, how many times have you put forward candidates that you like and the client doesn't like them, and they take a candidate who you sort of almost threw in as a filler, forgive me, I don't mean that in a bad way, and they hired that person because whatever it was, competence, cultural fit, whatever it may be, that was the candidate that was right for them, but you'd thrown them away because you'd use a personal subjective preference or bias to say, oh, you should be looking at this person. And it happens to everybody. People should be able to resonate with that. Joe, anything to add to that one? Joe G, that is.
Joe G, not Joe M. Yeah, absolutely. You know, in how many years have we all been in recruitment combined? And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people watching today who, you know, the traditional transactional model is I'll take your job description, and normally that's 2 pieces of paper. And then what I'll do is I'll send you 2 pieces of paper in return, which is a CV. So we're not giving clients enough information to make informed decisions anyway. And also that information, you know, and then just interviews, biographical interviews, competency-based interviews, if they're not put together properly, they allow the clients to use conscious and unconscious bias, don't they, to make these subjective decisions about people. And that's kind of what we're saying here, isn't it, Joe? That's what we need to be getting away from, educate clients come away from.
Yeah, absolutely. If a client came to me and wanted, and their priority was representation, diversity, which we're starting to see in certain sectors, especially when we kind of like move up the organization and the seniority of the roles, and if they wanted to work contingent, I would explain to them, you see, what's going to happen is you've got 5 agencies all competing against the clock. They're going to go to their immediate talent pools, the usual suspects. Unless they've got 10 years of investing in representation of talent pools, you're almost going to, it's even worse for diversity. And what's going to happen is all of those candidates that we needed to develop a really, deep dive marketing strategy to reach out to, who are sitting within, marginalized communities, they're not going to hear about the job. All those kind of like accessibility features that we also need to think about and build into the recruitment process, we won't have any time for that. And what we'll be doing is relying on our gut to assess people, because we're up against the clock, and it's, for us, the only way we get paid, as we know, on contingent is by getting CVs through and securing the gig. So it completely unravels the end goal of representation and diversity. And it's that whole thing of making sure that you're educating the client on, you make this contingent, fastest race to get the CV through. It will really dilute the talent pool in terms of representation. If we, by trusting me and going through this retained piece, and then we sell in our traditional retained model, but then we've got these additional pieces that we can weave in, whether it's inclusive recruitment technology platforms, whether it's marketing campaigns that we launch that we know are going to attract certain communities, whether it's going in and do a job description reevaluation with the client, whether it's going in and doing a training session with hiring managers on how to run an inclusive interview, whether it's developing a new suite of competency and behavioral based questions, whether it's giving them insight into the difference between culture fit and social fit. And we see how we start to layer up and build out this retained proposition. And what we should be in a position is where the client goes, I can see no other way to do this apart from partnering with you on this and giving you the time to do this properly, because we always say, don't we, that speed kills deals, right? We get that in our brains, but actually speed kills inclusion. It kills representation. And like I said, unless we've got this historical activity going on that has meant that we've got full representation in our talent pools, for me the only way is to offer that retained solution. And it's a really good tester of how serious your client is. What's the priority, diversity or time to hire? Right.
And also I think time to hire is brilliant, let's calculate time to hire, but that doesn't tell us the quality of the hire even before you've even started to look at diversity and equity within your teams. So I think you're absolutely right. I think the focus, or I think we've conditioned companies to believe, companies have conditioned themselves to believe that fast is better, and that fast is the only indication of good recruitment. And really it's the very last indication of good recruitment. You mentioned quite a few points there. I definitely, I'd recommend that everybody goes and looks at Joe's LinkedIn profile, connect with Joe, but also definitely look at the post that you put on a couple of days ago in order to introduce this session that we're doing today, because you put on there, didn't you? Transactional recruitment. This is all the stuff that's wrong with it. And then you put sort of retained recruitment, and this is all the stuff that's right. And you were building out a bit of a value prop there. So how would you recommend that recruitment businesses would go about building a value proposition that they could take out to clients so that they can start to demonstrate that they can do this type of thing for them?
I think that obviously not all of us are in a position to start to be able to join the dots between our current retained propositions and the methodology of inclusive, accessible and equitable recruitment. So I think there's an education piece that's definitely needed, and it's kind of looking at all those different component parts of inclusive, accessible and equitable recruitment, and then relating them into our capability, what's possible. Looking at the model that we've already got, and then just looking at, like, is there possibilities to introduce extended services. So I am all about evolving client services. It is my belief that the recruitment industry is really gonna have to up its game with the professional services.
Yeah.
So it could be, as an example, you start offering metrics, diversity data and metrics. So you say to your client, okay, so if we go down this route, we've got the capability, the technology to collect the demographics of everybody coming into the beginning of the recruitment process and the various stages throughout, so we can track the identity of people coming in, people applying, people sticking, people going through first, second, people getting offered. We can also highlight the people who deselect themselves or they take themselves out of process. So we can give you an overall performance of your recruitment process based on people's identity markers. And we can even spot where hiring manager bias might be creeping in. It could be that, I've started to see this with some recruitment businesses. They build out their marketing capabilities. So they're actually going in and working with their clients to develop an employee value proposition. So many organizations, even big global brands that you would expect to have this stuff, have just got like career pages. They haven't got like really advanced, sophisticated employee value propositions. It's not massively complex, and especially that was a great service for SMEs. So to be able to, like, not just put together a candidate document, right, that we would do in a retained search, we actually have an additional piece and help our clients develop a really solid EVP that weaves in all the work they're doing around ED&I and is ultimately going to appeal and attract to marginalized, underrepresented candidates. So that's just a couple of things.
Yeah, but they're paid for services, though, aren't they, Joe? That's a bit of people listening and thinking, am I just doing all this for the same fee? And I think the point you're making there is, once you're positioning yourself as a consultant, yes, you're delivering the recruitment service, but you're adding on other things, which extends and develops that relationship, doesn't it? So I think that's an important part.
And it differentiates you. This is the key thing, isn't it? We need to be thinking about. I think we need to be thinking about, like, as consultants, the entire talent attraction process and recruitment, and not just thinking about, like, well, this suits us because we've always done it that way. Looking at doing things differently. Like, we're already starting to see people come into the recruitment market offering different solutions. I've started to see more of this going on within, like, public sector, because they've, for years, the pressure has been on to attract underrepresented talent, and a lot of the time that's built into the service level agreements, right? So yeah, I mean, we're not this is another way to think about, this is an advanced income stream for us, right? And so this isn't free stuff, and this isn't like we need to employ people to do this for us. The capability is already there, but it's like using, for example, your marketing team, not to just do your internal comms and update the website and all the other glossy stuff and organize events. It's like, how can we actually use the marketing team to evolve the services, or other brilliant people out there that are experts in developing employee value propositions?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listen, I've missed out a couple of comments. So hello, Lewis, and Joanna. Nice to hear you watching us from Wales as well.
Another Joe.
Yeah, another Joe. Well, she might be a Joanna, so I'm just going to call her Joanna because that's her name there. But she's asked a question, which is, who does the EVP really well? Which types of organisation? I think is a comment in your experience.
Gosh, in my experience, so. I'm gonna kind of like focus on a couple of recruitment businesses, because some of the the bigger brands do this really, really well. But let's get something that we can. So I've got there's a business that I absolutely love called Oyster Partnership. I think they've got a great employee value proposition. You don't have to spend too much time on their socials to really get a vibe of what it's like to, you know, to work there. There's another organization that I've worked with called Reuben Sinclair. They've got it, you know, really nice employee value proposition. It's relatable, right? It's not like a big budget blockbuster, right? It's just like really simple, but it makes it really clear like what it's like to, you know, to be part of that organization. There are a couple of what I will do in the notes. I will put, just so you've got some. I'll put some links to some of the examples that I use in training, so you can have a look. But believe it or not, it's still relatively new. Not everybody's doing it.
Yeah. They really are.
At least that differentiation, doesn't it, Joe? It leads to that side of things.
Yeah. And if you want help with it, there's a bit. I'm not an expert in building this, but I did a LinkedIn Live with incredible TA expert Charu Malhotra, and she's got decades of developing employee value propositions, so she's a great person to follow on this stuff.
Listen, if people want to get in touch with Jo to reach out to her, because obviously she does a lot of this training work, up on screen, you've got her email address there. And as Joe G also mentioned earlier, just connect with her on LinkedIn, search for Jo Major, and you'll find her easily there as well. Listen, we're coming towards the end of our time, and I know we haven't covered all the topics that we would have liked to get through, but that's because this is such a big topic. So maybe we'll have you back again someday, Jo. But I think the information you've shared with everybody is enlightening. I think it's really is helpful for people to understand that, you know, this can help you differentiate yourself in a crowded marketplace rather than just being another me-only recruiter. Differentiate yourself and being a Me Too recruiter, become a me-only recruiter. And this is some of the way that you can do that. Retained, it just fits in beautifully with ED&I. And that's not a fad. That's not a thing. That's the reality. Is that enables you to deliver this type of work and separate yourself out from the crowd. So Jo, thank you very much for everything you've contributed today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Good. Jo, Jo G, anything to finalise with?
No, I just think thank you very much for coming on. We'd love to have you back. I think this subject is enormous. I think it'd be great to carry the conversation on. For those who are watching, if you do want to carry the conversation on, obviously, please go and link in with Jo, link in with us. You know, we'll be carrying the conversation on with Jo as well, because I think there's some really exciting stuff coming our way at iIntro as well. So yeah, thank you very much, Jo. It's been really interesting, and I've definitely enjoyed having you on.
Yeah. Great.
It's been great.
Awesome.
Never enough time, is there?
Never is, and obviously people are on their lunch hours or whatever there is, and if they're in America watching this back at some point early in the morning, that's great to have too. So listen, from us all here at the Retained Recruiter Show, thank you very much. We'll see you back in September.
Yes, that's it. So we're having a break now. So we've got 4 weeks off. Enjoy the summer, everybody. Thanks for everything so far. Do remember, we've got, I think, just over 70 shows that we've done, a whole library of topics, and they're on YouTube. And do get in contact if you need anything. If not, enjoy your summer. Thanks again, Jo, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jo. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.